The day before my daughter's wedding, her fiancé smiled across the candlelit table and said the words that would change everything. "You know what would be the perfect gift, Elaine? You disappearing from our lives forever." My name is Elaine Porter. I'm 53 years old, a marketing director, and the single mother of one beautiful daughter, Lily. I've spent my life building stability from the ground up after my husband passed away 15 years ago. Tomorrow was supposed to be her happiest day and mine too. But that smile, calculated, polite, hiding something cruel, stayed with me long after the rehearsal dinner ended. I didn't know what kind of man Lily was marrying, but by the next day everyone would. He wanted me gone, so I decided to give him exactly what he asked for on my terms. The rehearsal dinner at Maplecrest Country Club was everything a mother could hope for, so it seemed. The chandeliers shimmered, the laughter flowed, and the room buzzed with the kind of joy only weddings bring. Lily, my daughter, stood near the grand piano, practicing her vows with a nervous smile. Her blonde hair was pinned up elegantly, her blue dress soft against the warm glow of the lights. Across the room, Colin, her fiancé, watched her with that charming grin that had won everyone over. Everyone but me. I noticed how he straightened his tie whenever someone asked about his business. It was a small gesture, almost invisible, but I'd seen it before, always before a lie. When Lily glanced my way, I waved and smiled, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, unease coiled inside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Colin's success stories didn't quite add up. The expensive watch, the vague mentions of investors, the way he deflected questions with humor, it all felt rehearsed. As the dinner wound down, Colin approached me with that same practiced politeness. "Miss Porter," he said softly, "could we speak privately for a moment?" My pulse quickened, but I followed him. The hum of laughter faded behind us as he led me toward the library. His voice was pleasant, his posture relaxed, but I knew something was coming, something that would change everything. The library smelled of polished oak and old books, a place meant for quiet reflection, not confrontation. Colin closed the door behind us and turned, his smile dissolving like mist. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Elaine," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about tomorrow." I crossed my arms. What kind of conversation? He walked toward the liquor cabinet, poured himself a glass of brandy, and took a slow sip before speaking again. "About your role, or rather, your absence in Lily's future." I felt my stomach tighten. My absence. Yes, he set the glass down and looked straight at me. "Lily and I have talked, and we both agree that you're too involved. Too controlling. We want to start our marriage fresh, without constant interference." I forced myself to stay composed. "Lily agreed to this?" "It was her idea," he said smoothly. "She just doesn't have the heart to tell you. But I do." He leaned closer, the scent of brandy thick between us. "You know what would be the perfect wedding gift? You disappearing from our lives forever." The words hit harder than I expected, slicing through the years of sacrifice, the nights of loneliness, the dreams I'd built around my daughter's happiness. "And if I refuse?" I asked quietly. Colin smiled. "Then Lily will have to choose between her husband and her mother, and I don't think you'll like how that turns out." As he left the room, I stood frozen among the books, my reflection faint in the glass. He thought I'd break, but I'd spent my whole life surviving harder things than him. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Colin's smirk, heard his voice saying I should disappear. At 3 a.m., I sat in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. On the counter lay the deed to Willow Cove, the small cottage by the water I had bought after my husband died. It was my sanctuary, my dream for retirement. Lily had always loved that house. She called it her future weekend getaway and told her friends it would be her wedding gift. But Colin didn't know that the deed was still in my name. If he wanted me gone, I could grant his wish, just not the way he expected. I opened my laptop and typed an email to my real estate agent. "List the Willow Cove property immediately. Price it to sell fast. Cash offers preferred." Next, I called the caterer. "Hi, Helen, it's Elaine Porter. I know it's late, but I need a small change for tomorrow. Could you place one white envelope at each table setting?" "Envelopes?" she asked. "What's in them?" "Wedding favors," I said, smiling faintly. "Very personal ones." By dawn, my plan was set. I printed 67 reports, one for each guest. 6 months ago, I'd quietly hired a private investigator, Marcus Bell, after noticing consistencies in Colin's stories. He had delivered more than I expected: unpaid debts, failed investments, suspended trust funds, and victims who'd lost thousands believing in Colin's promises. Each envelope contained proof: concise, undeniable, devastating. When I sealed the last one, the sun was rising over the lake. Colin wanted me to disappear. I would. But first I'd make sure the truth appeared in my place. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect October day photographers dream about. Birds sang outside my window as if nothing in the world had changed, but everything had. By 8 o'clock, I was already dressed and on my way to the venue. The box of envelopes sat on the passenger seat beside me, neatly stacked and ready. 67 small truths disguised as thank you notes. At the back entrance of the country club, I met Helen, the caterer, carrying trays of pastries and coffee. Her eyes widened when she saw the box. "Elaine, you're making me nervous," she joked. I smiled. "Trust me, Helen, today will be memorable." One envelope per place setting, that was all she needed to know. Later in the bridal suite, Lily sat surrounded by her bridesmaids, her laughter soft and effortless. She looked stunning, pure joy in white silk. I sat quietly in the corner, watching her reflection in the mirror. "Mom," she said, catching my eye, "what if something goes wrong today?" I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Sometimes, sweetheart, things go wrong for the right reasons. Maybe it's the universe protecting us." She laughed, not understanding, but her smile eased something in me. When her makeup artist asked about my speech for the reception, I simply said, "I think I'll let the envelopes do the talking." By 4 o'clock, guests filled the rose garden behind Maplecrest Country Club. Rows of white chairs lined the aisle, and a soft melody from the string quartet drifted through the air. Lily walked arm in arm with my brother James, radiant in her grandmother's lace gown. Her smile glowed, and for a fleeting moment I almost let my resolve waver. Then I saw Colin waiting at the altar, that same polished smile, the one that fooled everyone but me, stretched across his face. He looked like a man who believed he had already won. As the minister began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today," I thought of another phrase, "dearly deceived." When the moment came, "If anyone here objects to this union," I felt every eye on me. But I stayed silent. The truth no longer needed my voice. It was already written, sealed, and waiting at every guest table. When Colin kissed my daughter, applause erupted. Lily beamed, happiness flooding her face. She caught my eye, blew me a kiss, and I smiled back, my heart heavy but steady. The ceremony ended in a blur of music and camera flashes. As the crowd moved toward the reception hall, I whispered to myself, "It's almost time." The reception hall glowed with golden light and laughter. Champagne sparkled in tall glasses, the band played softly, and the guests buzzed about the beautiful ceremony. From my seat at the head table, I watched them all, uncles, college friends, co-workers, each one about to learn who Colin Hayes truly was. At 6:30, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin dinner, the bride's mother has prepared a small token of appreciation for each of you. You'll find an envelope at your place setting, a personal note from the Porter family." 67 pairs of hands reached for 67 envelopes. For a moment, only the sound of tearing paper filled the air. Then came the first gasp from Colin's fraternity friend at table 3. Another followed from Lily's college roommate at table 6. Whispered voices grew louder, rippling through the room like a spreading storm. At our table, Colin's smile faltered. His eyes darted around the room as he sensed the shift in energy. "What's going on?" Lily asked, confusion creasing her forehead. One guest stood, clutching the papers in his trembling hand. "Colin, you told me that investment would triple in 6 months. You owe me $10,000. Another voice rose from across the hall. "He owes me $8,000 from that photography business he never started." Then another, and another. The hum of celebration collapsed into a roar of disbelief. People held up documents, financial statements, and emails, all printed neatly on white paper with one name highlighted again and again, Colin Hayes. Lily turned to him, pale. "Colin, what is this?" I lifted my champagne glass slowly. "Evidence," I said softly. He glared at me. "What have you done?" "I gave you what you wanted," I replied. "You asked me to disappear. So I'm taking everything you expected with me, including the lake house you thought was yours." Lily's voice cracked. "You sold it?" "Yes," I said. It was my house, not your wedding gift. And I decided it's better off belonging to someone who deserves it. Across the room, guests began calling lawyers, their phones lighting the dim hall. The truth was out, and the man who'd tried to erase me was finally being erased instead. By 7 o'clock, the reception hall looked nothing like the fairy tale Lily had imagined. The music had stopped, the laughter gone. Guests whispered in small, uneasy clusters while others clutched the papers I had given them. Colin stood pale and sweating beside my daughter, trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. "This is all a misunderstanding," he stammered. "Elaine is having some kind of breakdown." Before I could respond, a deep voice cut through the room. "A breakdown doesn't come with signed financial records and police reports." Detective Harris, an off-duty guest and family friend, stepped forward, holding one of the documents. "You've been under quiet investigation for months, Colin. Tonight just made our job easier." Lily's hands shook as she turned to me. "Mom, how long have you known?" "Long enough to protect you," I said. "Long enough to see what kind of man you were about to marry." As the detective called for backup, Colin tried to leave, but 2 officers intercepted him at the door. The crowd watched in stunned silence as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He looked at me then, eyes full of fury. "You'll regret this." I met his stare calmly. "No, Colin, the only thing I regret is not exposing you sooner." When they led him away, Lily sank into her chair, her wedding dress crumpled and stained with tears. Around her, the guests murmured softly, not out of gossip but sympathy. The celebration was over. The reckoning had begun. Hours later, the hall was nearly empty. The lights were dimmed, the cake untouched, and the smell of wilted flowers filled the air. Lily sat beside me at the head table, her makeup smudged, her hands still trembling. "I can't believe this happened," she whispered. "Everything feels like a nightmare." "It's over now," I said gently. "You're free of him." She looked down at the engagement ring still on her finger, then slipped it off slowly and set it on the table between us. "How could I have been so blind, Mom? You made me think you were the problem, that you didn't respect our relationship." I took her hand. "People like Colin are experts at that. They make you question yourself until you can't see straight. But love doesn't isolate, it connects. The moment someone asks you to cut ties with people who love you, it's not love anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "Do you hate me for not listening to you?" I shook my head. "I could never hate you. You needed to see the truth for yourself. Sometimes pain is the only teacher strong enough to break the spell." For the first time that night, she leaned her head on my shoulder, and in the quiet ruin of her wedding, we began to rebuild what mattered most us. 2 days later, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by folders, coffee cups, and the dull ache of exhaustion. The police had taken Colin's computers, phones, and documents, but something about his scam still felt unfinished. There was a pattern I couldn't ignore: names, numbers, and accounts that didn't belong to him alone. When my phone rang, I recognized the voice instantly. "Elaine, it's Marcus Bell. I think you should see what I found." He arrived within the hour, carrying a manila envelope. Inside were photos Colin meeting with another man in a hotel lobby, exchanging what looked like files and envelopes of cash. "His name's Noah Clark," Marcus said. "He's Colin's business partner and he's already moved on to another family." He laid out more photos, an elegant woman in her 50s, a younger woman beside her. "Julia Whitmore and her daughter Ava," Marcus explained, "widowed, wealthy, and connected to the same social circles as you. Clark is dating Ava right now, just like Colin dated Lily." My stomach dropped. It was the same scheme all over again: target the daughter, gain the mother's trust, and drain them both. "What do we do?" I asked. Marcus looked me straight in the eye. "We stop him before they lose everything." For a long moment, I stared at the smiling faces in the photographs, the next victims who didn't yet know the danger they were in. Then I nodded. "Set up a meeting with Julia Whitmore. If they think they can keep doing this, they've picked the wrong mother to underestimate." The following week, Julia Whitmore welcomed me into her home, a grand, ivy-covered estate overlooking the Hudson River. She was graceful, intelligent, and kind, the kind of woman people instinctively trusted. When I explained who I was, and what I suspected about her daughter's boyfriend, she didn't want to believe it. No mother ever does. But when I showed her Marcus's photos, and the bank records linking Noah Clark to Colin Hayes, disbelief turned to dread. "My daughter adores him," Julia said quietly. "She thinks he's perfect." "I understand," I replied. "So did mine." Together we agreed on a plan. Marcus would set up hidden cameras around Julia's dining room. Detective Harris would be stationed nearby, and Julia would invite Noah to dinner under the pretense of a casual family evening. I'd be there as a friend from the country club. The night of the dinner, the atmosphere was perfectly normal. Candlelight, wine, laughter. Noah was charming, too charming. He spoke about his consulting business, about his clients overseas, slipping in all the same vague phrases Colin had used. When Julia mentioned her late husband's foundation, Noah's eyes lit up. A cause like that deserves smart investment. Maybe I could help you manage those accounts. Marcus's camera caught everything, the gleam in his eyes, the practiced confidence. Julia tilted her head and asked casually, "Did you go to Stanford, like you told Ava?" "Of course," Noah said smoothly. "That's strange," Julia replied, her tone mild. "My brother teaches there. He's never heard of you." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Then Detective Harris entered from the kitchen, badge visible. "Noah Clark," he said evenly, "I think it's time we talked about your business ventures and your partner Colin Hayes." Noah froze, the mask cracked, and in that frozen moment, Ava realized who she'd really been dating. After that night, everything happened quickly. Noah Clark was arrested within hours, and his connection to Colin's fraudulent network unfolded like a web. Dozens of families across several states had fallen victim to their schemes. Julia and Ava gave full statements, and their cooperation helped investigators piece together the scale of the operation. For weeks afterward, I kept thinking about all the women who never got the chance to see the truth before it was too late, the ones who lost their savings, their confidence, or their sense of trust. That's when the idea for second chances began to form. Lily and I used the money from the sold lake house to open a small foundation downtown. We offered guidance for people caught in manipulative relationships, resources for financial fraud victims, and a network of investigators who knew the warning signs. Julia joined us on the board, while Ava volunteered to speak with young women who'd been targeted. What started as one act of revenge slowly became something greater, a mission to protect others. One afternoon, Lily said softly, "Mom, maybe losing everything was how we found our real purpose." I smiled. Maybe disappearing was exactly what we needed to come back stronger. It's strange how life works. The man who once told me to disappear ended up vanishing himself, taken away in handcuffs, remembered only for the damage he caused. But what he didn't realize was that his cruelty gave me clarity. I used to think protecting my daughter meant shielding her from pain. Now I know it means helping her face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Real love never asks you to erase yourself. It doesn't isolate you or make you choose between the people who care for you. It stands beside you even when everything else falls apart. If you're listening and something about your story feels wrong, trust that feeling. Write down the facts. Look closer. You might be saving your own life. Thank you for watching. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from.